the crews and the whole industry that supports them. So this is such an important conversation. We're so glad that we have such amazing people working across the industry here to share a little about what's being done, what needs to be done. I just want to remind you again, I know the 988 mental health crisis number was brought up in the last panel. Again, you can take action on advocating for better mental health crisis services at our table back there, enter for a chance to win signed merch and other cool stuff from all the artists performing at the music festival at Central Park. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our moderator. So she is Jennifer Leff, LCSW. She is director at Music Cares, which is an organization doing amazing things to support the music community. She is also a board member at SoundMind. We're so proud to have her. She's supported a number of people across a number of different places across the music industry, doing practice work as well. So please welcome her. She will be moderating today's panel, and she'll also introduce our other amazing panelists tonight. So please give a huge hand for the mental health in the music industry panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out. And I know the four of us up here, we just want to thank SoundMind for all their incredible work. I've seen what they've done since its infancy about 4 years ago, and it's truly tremendous. So thank you to Chris and his team. So tonight we are going to talk about mental health in the music industry. And one thing that I like to start with, because when people think music industry, I have come across people who just think the performers. And I always like to clarify that there is an ecosystem of the music industry, and that means the singer, the songwriter, the producer, the engineer, the crew, the tour bus driver, the list goes on. And without these people, we would not have the music that means so much to feed our souls. So here tonight, we have three great representatives of this ecosystem. I am going to give a very brief one-liner about who they are, and then I'll throw it over to them to give some more information about what they think is relevant for everybody to know. And I'm also going to ask them to describe, and this is what the kickoff will be, what does mental health mean to you? So at the end, we have Jim Digby. We have Zaina. And we have Suze. And rather than me reading all the amazing things they do and they have done, I'm going to let them start. So, Jim.
Hi, everybody. Jim. I am a longtime listener, first-time caller. I've been a production person my entire life. I've had highs and lows with various artists, not the least of which was, Marilyn Manson, Genesis, Phil Collins, Hootie and the Blowfish, but most notably Linkin Park. For almost the entirety of their career, I was their tour director. After the Indiana State Fair stage collapse, for a longer story than we've got time for tonight, I helped to found the Event Safety Alliance, a nonprofit organization that I'm the president of, that advocates for safety in live events, so that bad things happen with less frequency out there in the world of producing live shows. I also sit on the Behind the Scenes Foundation as a director, which is why I'm here tonight. Behind the Scenes has established. I think that was mine. Behind the Scenes has established some programs that we'll get into in a little bit, but I'm also honored to have the wife of Chester Bennington, Talinda Bennington, is here with me tonight, who also immediately in the aftermath of Chester's death by suicide pulled up her bootstraps and got out there and did everything she possibly could to help the artist community and the backstage community to not suffer more loss and more trauma. So that 988 thing that's happening here, she's got her fingers in that as well. Okay, thank you. That was longer than you probably wanted.
No. And describe what mental health means to you.
Oh, sorry. Well, I thought I was pretty mentally tough up until the day Chester died by suicide. And I learned that that's not really the truth about myself. And I thought that all the things, I thought I had a pretty good grasp on what mental health means. But thankfully that's been outed now, and I'm a different person, and I understand a whole new meaning behind mental health and behind keeping people's mental health solid and addressing the individual human as their individual self. And I'd love to see our community continue to progress in the current pace that we're in right now, which is pretty breakneck if you think about, you didn't even talk about mental health 4 years ago outwardly, and it's only, I don't want to benchmark it to Chester, but it seems kind of, for me at least, since Chester's passing, that there's this really vocal awareness, awakening, an outing of this stigma that's been so bad, but it's also so necessary for us to talk about. And we're on the way. I think we're on our way to making real change. And I'm hoping that we can do that together.
And that's going to come up later in terms of this has started and how do we continue it and maintain the momentum. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's going to be hard to follow. Hi, I'm Zaina. I'm a singer-songwriter. I'm originally from Oakland, California, but I'm now based in New York City. I have Serbian and Croatian and Lebanese roots, so I enjoy incorporating those elements from those genres and stuff into my music, even though I'm a pop artist. So I call the sound gypsy pop. And basically, mental health is super important to me. So my first debut album was called The Beauty of Zora, which I dedicated to my grandmother who had schizophrenia. She was brilliant and beautiful. Her name was Zora. And my middle name is Zora, so I got named after her, which was pretty cool. So in that debut EP, I kind of talk about my own struggles with mental health. So depression, anxiety, paranoia, insomnia, which I got from all that other stuff. So yeah, basically, since then, I've just really tried to make it a point to my audience and my listeners that they're not alone in like their hurt, in their dreams, in their fears. We all are very similar in that. So yeah, besides that, I guess mental health means to me self-love, self-care. It's really important to take care of your mind, your body, your soul. And I think mental health is just all of that. So yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Suze. I'm founder of the Rockstar Advocate. I'm a growth mindset and productivity coach. I started in the music industry at 18 at the major labels, Atlantic, EMI, Astroworks, and by 21, I had hit complete burnout. I was going to school. I got out of school early, doubled up on all my classes. I had my own office by 20. I just thought I was on top of the world, and I barely lasted 10 months at my first full-time job as an employee at the major labels. And ironically enough, the boss who pushed me towards the edge was the same boss who got me into therapy. So one of the main reasons I was there was him, but I was very grateful to be in therapy. I still see the same therapist today, and couple of years later, after I left the labels and tried my own businesses in the industry, manager, label owner, all the different things, I kind of left a little bit and went to go get my master's in psychology, thinking I'm going to get out of this toxic industry. And then the master's taught me, well, wait a minute, there's something here that needs to go back in the industry. So that's when I started the Rockstar Advocate about 8 years ago. And it was during this time, I thought, I want to be able to counsel. I don't want to just coach. And I want to go deeper. But I just couldn't bring myself to go back for another degree. And then the day before lockdown, my cousin took his life. I've lost too many people to suicide. And he took his life on the anniversary of my dad's passing, the day before lockdown. And I realized, okay, it's now or never. So I went back for my LMSW. I'm almost done, almost there. Thank you. And so it's my hope to start using the Rockstar Advocate as a place to offer mental health counseling once I pass that finish line. So thank you so much for having me.
How do you describe mental health?
Yes, sorry. So to me, it's about managing being present. Managing, taking a moment to check in with your body. What do your emotions, your psyche, your soul need at the moment? Just the ability to be present and hit pause and say, what do I need? To me, mental health is about, giving yourself permission to be a little selfish and tune the world out for a moment and check in with yourself.
And what I think is really interesting is that everybody has their own view of what mental health is. And I'm sure if we asked anybody else out there, we would get 5 different answers. And that being said, we can't pigeonhole mental health. And we have to look at it, that it's diverse and we're diverse. And that means that it needs to be individualized. And there isn't just a one-size-fits-all. So in the panel before this, someone mentioned that, and we know this and we've heard this, that one of the silver linings of COVID is that it shed this light on mental health, and it has increased awareness, it's increased dialogue, it's helped to decrease the stigma. So I want to just start with COVID, just kind of as we come out of this tunnel of COVID. So the music industry was the first one of the first industries to shut down. It certainly has been one of the last to get going. And as we redefine ourselves and how we work and how we prioritize and how we have relationships, we've seen a lot of shifts. So, Jim, why don't you start with talking about some of the mental health struggles you saw either in yourself or with your peers in the industry, and then focus on some of the shifts that happened in the industry as we reemerge.
Wow. Okay. So it was Music Cares and Erica Cruson and Joanna who came to our rescue in the wake of what happened at Lincoln Park. And Music Cares was providing group counseling for us. And this was my first experience with counseling. And it was from that moment where Music Cares got us, where the band put us all in the same room and allowed us to ruminate through the loss of Chester, the whole mental health discussion became kind of, oh my gosh, as I said, an awakening we were in this room were crew people who had been a part of the team for more than 10 years, who we worked this closely with day in and day out, who after 2 or 3 sessions were telling stories about themselves and their own suicide ideation in an environment that I thought I had built to be, this is family. If you're having problems, I would know about it, surely. But here we are in this room with some of the same team members saying, I'm suicidal. And that caused a great pause for me personally and for us as a team, quite obviously. And going home, my kids at that time were young and knew Chester and Talinda, and I was seriously worried about them, my oldest. So I took the mental health first aid training as a second step so that I could understand what I don't understand about mental health. So I'll tunnel in and out of these different stories and try to connect the dots. And then COVID came along, which, the silver lining is that we stopped, is that we slowed down, is that we took a breath, and that we thought about who we are. And we had lots of room to be in pain because our life had shifted, but then hopefully most of us got through that life-shifting moment to a new light and a new realization. I know I don't want to sleep in a tour bus anymore, but that's the life I chose. But now I recognize what self-care feels like. I didn't even recognize that I was ignoring self-care until COVID. Now, COVID has punched us all squarely in the face in the entertainment business, right? You haven't done as many shows. I know Suze hasn't done. Suze's business has been killing it. But, there's a conversation among us who are in the trenches about work-life balance. That's not nobody ever said that in the music business. Work-life balance, hell, I'm going to do 2 more shows today. And we, amongst ourselves, we Indians, are taking that seriously. We're taking it very seriously, the work-life balance idea. The challenge we have is the big promoters and the managers have to go back and get these artists their vig. And we believe now we've found work-life balance, but the people who power the machine may not be in the same place. But our voice is getting louder and it's getting more heard, I would like to think, that hopefully we can all find a new balance coming out of COVID. Certainly it's easier to have the conversation in a room like this with folks about, what would otherwise be, hey, I broke my ankle the other day, and I need a boot. Or hey, I'm not having a good mental health day, and I need to take a pause. I need to think for me.
Yeah, that pause is so important. And that this increased dialogue, this is what has to go on. Suze, one thing that Jim mentioned, it has to do with this culture shift. I mean, you have seen a changing landscape of this culture shift, Jim. And so this culture shift isn't going to happen overnight. And a lot of people are asking, so who needs to spearhead it? And maybe it's not just one person. So given the fact that you were on the business side, you now have shifted a bit to working with the businesses. Right. How do you see that leadership role? Where are they in terms of minding mental health for the industry? Because it has to trickle down. So what are you seeing?
Honestly, so right now I just turned the corner on my 20th year in the industry, which is a little hard for me to fathom sometimes. But I remember starting at the labels, and I was the only one with a Facebook email, and everyone would come in my office to run Facebook promotions and stuff like that. And I remember hearing what, you're yawning? Well, oh, you got 2 hours of sleep? Good, you're lucky. That's 45 more minutes than I got. Like, sleep when you're dead, stop it. Nobody wants to hear it. And prove how much you want it and all of that stuff. And I came up in that industry hearing it for years and years and years. And after leaving the industry a bit, starting my own businesses within it, but getting coaching from outside the industry, because there were no coaches back then in the industry, and realizing, I remember in 2015, Ariana Huffington wrote The Sleep Revolution, might have been 2016. And I had just started my company, and I remember pitching to conferences. Can I talk about this? Can I talk about how states are passing laws that you can get what's equal to a DWI if you're pulled over for sleeping, falling asleep at the wheel, because touring musicians and truck drivers were the top two victims and perpetrators of accidents on the road because of falling asleep at the wheel. And I said, we have to talk about this. I got laughed out of every conference I pitched to. But 2017, 2018, there were panels, future of music, or there were panels of being better in the industry. They still weren't mentioning mental health. And now, thanks to the 320 Festival and events like this, and Launch Music Conference was one of the first ones that really I noticed having mental health panels on it. It's happening, but right now I'm finally getting hired by agencies who I've been pitching to for years to come on to work with the employees, because we're noticing it with artists and stuff like that and touring musicians, but the employees who work behind the stage, who are told to sleep when they're dead and be thankful, I can do workshops there, but I'm still being hired by outside agencies in the creative space. Music labels, they still don't hire me. I just got turned down the other day, like, oh, we're gonna look at our budget again. And it's what I was being told by musicians 8 years ago. Well, I need that money for studio time, but I'm gonna come back to you on that. So the wave is happening, but it's taking a while for leadership to get to a point, because I still think we have a lot of leadership that's from the old school industry of, well, I got here okay, and I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, and I didn't complain about it. And so, there's still an old regime that doesn't see the value in investing in the mental wellness of their employees. But finance industry does it. The film industry has started to do it. All these other big titans in industry are doing it, and they've been doing it for years. And the music industry is still catching up a little bit.
I think, if I can, I think one of the things that's powering us right now, and forgive me for not knowing the tennis player's name, but it's moments like the Olympian saying, I can't come, I can't do it, I'm not in the right place. Osaka plays, I can't play. It's musicians who are now, big musicians, popularity-wise, who are saying, James Hetfield the other night from Metallica got on stage and told his audience in Brazil, I suffer from mental health issues. And he darn near had a breakdown on stage. And those moments, those iconic moments in what you're doing, Pronoun, those kinds of things where the artist and the figureheads and the icons that we see on TV are making the statements, I think is going to power the change faster, for sure. The managers will follow because that's what their artist wants them to do. Yeah. They're not going to encourage, I shouldn't speak in generality like that, but many will not encourage to take a break because of a mental health issue.
Right. And
I mean, you would know that best, right? From Music Cares.
So, and let me just, this is a little commercial break. So for those of you who don't know Music Cares, we are the charity of the Recording Academy. So people know that as the Grammys. And we provide a safety net of assistance to this ecosystem in the music industry. Anything from basic living needs to medical and dental support, and addiction and mental health. So when someone is in trouble, they come to us. And what we have often seen, and I have, I've borne witness to a manager saying, I have to get this guy into treatment. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we can get this guy into treatment tomorrow. Is he ready to go? He's ready to go. However, I need him to come to Kansas to finish this recording, and then we can get him to where you want him to go. I've been working with this guy for 6 months. We're in touch. And I said, we've been talking once a month. He's finally ready to go, and you want him to go to Kansas first to finish what you need to do for your dollar? And that's, I think, what a lot of the people are up against. And hopefully this message of this guy isn't going to get you that dollar unless he gets to treatment and gets what he needs. So I think that message is being heard a little more, to your point. Zaina, as an artist, what is it like hearing all of this from us who are saying, Jim, this has to change, this has to change. You're in it. How does this feel?
Well, I think, honestly, it's kind of weird that everything became like real during COVID. Like it didn't seem like it was a real thing before, like mental health at all. I mean, I think some artists talked about it and some like public figures and stuff talked about it here and there, but it wasn't like a thing that everyone really even understood or like thought was important. So like hearing all of this, it's kind of like, it's good because now there's a conversation, but like I feel like the biggest question is like, how long is the conversation gonna last? And like, is it gonna grow and are things gonna change? Or is this like temporary because it's COVID and then once we go back to like the real world or whatever, is it all just gonna like fall back into old habits?
Well, I think just, on the last panel, I'm sorry, I forgot who said it, but, they had talked about starting trouble. And I think this really pertains to this too. I mean, as the manager, felt they needed to go to Kansas, they have somebody to answer to, and that person has somebody to answer to, and everyone's afraid of losing their job. There aren't a lot out there. There's this whole scarcity mindset. So, until we all start making enough noise and demanding certain benefits be given or certain resources be put in place, yeah, everybody will, I remember working at the labels and the top down felt, yeah, they let them complain all they want and I used to be told, oh, you're going to leave. I quit that job 5 times. I'm not kidding. And every time I quit, they said, great, there's a line out the door dying to take this job from you. I was making $25 a year and working 16-hour days. But they were like, there's a line out the door. And that's the attitude. You don't like it? Leave. But if everybody doesn't like it, I think we could start to see some change.
And I think it's interesting too. Susan and I just did the Launch Music Conference a few weeks ago, and that's kind of a DIY artist community there. They're driving the vans themselves, or mom and dad are helping get them from show to show. And what was really interesting is we had a breakout table about mental health, and many of these young artists wanted to come and talk about mental health. So it feels as though people are less inclined to hide the questions and more inclined to want at least some understanding or to know that people are thinking about mental health and how can they think about their mental health.
And that as they come into this industry, that is something that they are going to expect.
Yeah.
Right? As this old guard moves out.
Right. Don't pretend like it doesn't exist. It exists. One of the bands came up and asked, well, the mother was asking on behalf of the band, the kids don't like, they do a 60-minute show and they don't like having to do the 30-minute meet and greet. And I said, well, the 30-minute meet and greet is where the rubber hits the road. That's where you build your fan base. And I said, tell the kids before they come out of the dressing room, it's a 90-minute show. 60 minutes is on stage, and 30 minutes is pressing the flesh and shaking hands and signing autographs. That's all part of the show. And then the extroverted introverts, who are the musicians, can escape. And if you get their mindset thinking that that's part of the show, then it's less of a mental trigger to think, oh, God, I don't really want to be out here. I'm uncomfortable in this environment when I'm not on stage. So it really is, we're now in a place where we can have that conversation, which I find really exciting and hopeful.
And that's the culture shift. I mean, that slow glacier culture shift, right?
Yeah.
But even, I think you said this too, there was never panels around mental health at conferences. Right. And now, I mean, Music Cares, we get called a lot to go to these panels. Right. At Event Safety Alliance, I know there are panels now. I mean, that speaks volume that this taboo subject is now welcome.
Mainstream. And
it is well attended, right?
Yeah.
Why don't why don't we give Emma the chance to talk about, because this really, we all have to deal with our mental wellness. You're in the throes of it in a different way. You have the social media, you have the pressure to continue making something of yourself and shining. How do you maintain, however, I'd like to know what you call it. Is it mental health? Is it mental wellness? Is it just a feeling of being present? How do you handle that?
Well, I think social media is very strange. It's like a double-edged sword because you can really get close to your fans and your audience and your listeners and keep growing your fan base. But it also comes with all the toxic stuff and like the bullying and all that. But I feel like for me, I just try to think of it as the positives only, really. Just because it's, hundreds of messages and comments every day that are so positive, and then there's those like 3 mean messages or 3 mean comments. So I just try not to focus on that. I also feel like for people who comment mean things and bully people online, it's like, I feel bad for them, honestly, because I feel like they're hurting in some way, and they're putting it on other people that they don't even know, and they don't know what they're going through. I had like a weird TikTok situation, of course. I posted a TikTok video, and it got a bunch of hate super fast. And it was something like so simple. I was asking people if they wanted to be in my music video for my song "You Are Beautiful," which you were talking to me about right before this. And it was like so many comments so fast that were just so mean and so like just ridiculous, honestly. Some of them weren't even as mean as they were just like, why are you trying to like start something here with, they're like fighting with each other too. It was just so weird. And my family and my friends were like kind of freaking out. They're like, delete the video, like just get rid of it, don't look at the comments, you don't want to get upset. And I was like, no, like I'm not upset. I'm honestly upset for them. So the next day I posted a video on TikTok, and it was like 2 minutes long, which was last year, and that's like unheard of for TikTok last year. 2 minutes is like 2 years. Like, the max video was like 15 seconds, maybe. So I posted a 2-minute video talking about bullying, talking about mental health, and the comments were so overwhelming. I was crying for like a week because so many people were confiding in me about their struggles with mental health, losing family members, and like their children to like suicide because of bullying. Like it's insane, like how social media works and how powerful it is. But I like to think of that part of it, the part of people like confiding in me, of them telling stories to each other in the comments too, and connecting with other people that they would have never connected with before. But because they relate, because they lost a family member, or because they were also, struggling with anxiety or depression, they can now be friends and, make that connection. So I feel like social media, you just have to look at the positives and ignore the negatives, and know that the negative stuff is kind of just people projecting their own self-hate onto other people. I forgot the other part of your question, but social media, yes. And then, what was the last part of the question?
Sorry. I'm going to go back to something you said. So you went to friends and family who gave you some support. So talk about, where do you get support throughout kind of your growth and journey as an artist?
Well, I feel like the main thing is kind of just understanding that people want to be there for you. Like, people want to be supportive. Like, all of you here, like, I'm assuming you're not sitting there like, oh, I hope they fail on stage right now. Like, people want to be, people want to be supportive. They want to like care for you and because they want that back as well. So it's like, I feel like the first thing is kind of just like understanding that, like, okay, I need to talk to someone. I need to like have this conversation with someone. I need to kind of see what this is like on the outside of like my head. Because I feel like people get so in their heads, and that's where all the real bad stuff is. So I think it's kind of, I mean, finding support, I feel like, is just everyone around you. Like, the way that you would want somebody to come to you when they're having struggles, like, it's the same for them. They want you to go to them and talk to them about what you're going through and be there for you. So I feel like, I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It did. It did.
Okay.
Jim, can we kind of take this and link it to the touring world and the rigors of the touring world and how you've seen shifts with what people used to do and now how coping, hopefully, right, has changed, has shifted a bit?
I don't know that I can make that statement. I think that, you know, the touring world right now is all guns blazing all the time. There's so many shows out in the market right now, and we've lost, by some accounts, about 30% of our workforce. You know, our legacy workforce who have the knowledge have not come back after COVID. And that puts the pressures back onto the few people who remain. I would like to think that our leadership, people who do what I do for a living, are more informed and better trauma-informed leaders. But I think the reality is that the rigors of showing up at 7 in the morning and still having to build a show, unload 15 trucks worth of gear, and get an artist on stage, you know, whatever the scale you put this in, haven't changed. The rigor has remained. What we tried to do over the downtime is create enough conversation with the initiatives that we have to hopefully spark some of that leadership out there to give space for, look, people are coming back to work with PTSD. You know, COVID has ripped our souls out, because we're one of those industries that, you know, we don't identify as our human selves. We identify as, I'm so-and-so with such and such a band, right? And because we lost that identity, you know, we're really shocked by that. Plus, we're having to feed ourselves, we're having to put a roof over our heads, all those other things. So the workforce is in a traumatic state, in my view, and it requires a different approach to leadership, which is not all guns a-blazing, in my view. But the task hasn't changed. And I don't think we're doing enough to make space for that kind of education. And I don't think that there are people who are of the veteran community who are invested. You know, they got the gig, they got to go work. They're not thinking about people's mental health, unfortunately. But the tribe is taking care of itself. It's taking care of each other, I think. In the trenches, I see a lot of people taking care of each other. I see a lot of nice messages. Hey, friend check. Hey, you know, is everything okay? I'm hopeful still.
Yeah. What about language? Has language changed?
I think the answer is the same. Those who have been investing in themselves, who have taken a minute to breathe during COVID and recognize that, oh yeah, it's a pretty rigorous job. I don't think the kind of bullying tactics and you know, bull in a china shop leadership tactics are still out there as much. But, you know, like music, there's something for everybody out there. I'm sure there are camps who are ignoring all of this. But I do think some of the folks that I know are paying more attention to it. We've said enough, you know, make room for people to have a bad day.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to happen. It's okay to not be okay.
And obviously, the more that message is sent and solidified, that other piece is not going to be tolerated. I mean, that's the hope, right?
Well, and I think
that's the idyllic plan.
And I think that's where we get our power, because I don't think artists intentionally allow their crew to be bullied. I think artists don't see the team that they've built. They only see the finished product when they show up on the show day. And therefore, you know, a lot of bad behaviors go under the radar of the artist and are not challenged by the artist. I think if James Hetfield knew that his production manager was bullying the crew to get them to do their job, he'd fire that person and he'd get a new person in there. So I don't know how we close that gap. I don't know how we get artists seeing what's behind the PowerPoint slide, as it were.
So that's the next.
Right, right.
That's the
Next
the
COVID.
next challenge.
Next pandemic.
Next pandemic.
Yeah.
Woo. You bring up the point, I always think about the manager, the crew, oftentimes they're the repositories, right? To have to hold other people's trauma and mental health and the tour manager has to take care of that artist and report back to the label or the management company. That's a lot of responsibility.
And often they're not trained to be that repository.
They're never trained to be that. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
My training came from fatherhood. I became a better tour manager because I became a father, right? There's no training out there at this point in time.
so that's a nice segue to, let's talk resources. A lot of resources have come up in the past few years. Jim, I think, is in a great position to talk about some of these resources. And then we can talk about what you think is realistic as an artist and what you would see actually working with your clientele.
So as I mentioned, after Chester passed, I was, like everyone in the camp, shell-shocked. And I watched my kids searching for answers. We didn't explain to them what had happened. We kept that hidden. But I also recognized, holy crud, I don't know how to deal with this. It was the first time I ever looked at myself as not being fully fit mentally. And someone made me aware of the mental health first aid training. And there is a youth version of this mental health first aid training. So I took that to learn what I could about looking out for my family. And surprisingly, I thought I was somebody who was well-read, and there I am in the pre-test of 20 questions, 18 of them wrong, because everything I thought I knew about mental health was absolutely wrong. And it's a fantastic training.
Can you just give a couple examples? I mean, I think it's...
Of those questions?
Yeah,
of course.
just what really,
Well,
kind of to debunk the myth of what maybe we all think.
If somebody tells you if you think somebody's going to commit suicide, should you A, ignore it, B, tell a friend or something along those lines, C, confront them about it, D, whatever. And so I chose something that wasn't C, but the real answer is confront them about it. And it's not really a confrontation, but you engage with the conversation. You ask these questions. Have you thought about it? Have you chosen a method? Have you chosen a time? And you're like, what? I'm supposed to ask that? No. Well, yeah, science proves that you should. This program, Mental Health First Aid Training, is 20 years old. There's over 5 million people trained across the globe. It was born in Australia. And it is science-based, and it's constantly evolved. They're constantly evolving the program to fit the new things that they learn about approaching not just suicide, but panic attacks and bad days in general. Speaking to resources, I sit as the director on the Behind the Scenes Foundation. Lori Rubenstein, who's the chair of that foundation, also took this training at roughly the same time. And she had this same epiphany I did. Holy crap, everybody in our industry needs this training, because it's like CPR for the brain. Only you'll actually use this probably 10 times before you use CPR. So Lori and the Behind the Scenes Foundation engaged with the Mental Health Foundation and created an entertainment-specific iteration of this training. So they speak our language. They speak to the rigors of the road and the rigors of the entertainment business when training the mental health first aid. The Behind the Scenes Foundation's also lifted a program it's a peer-to-peer chat app. So if you want to just engage with someone who's a neutral bystander, you can via this chat app. They have anti-harassment, anti-bullying resources at the foundation. They have toolbox talk resources, which is, hey, you start the day with, hey, everybody, I'm Jim. This is what we're building here today. By 4 o'clock, we need to be ready for doors. And by the way, we care about your mental health, and we want you to say, I got to stop if something's not right. They also have a entertainment therapist finder, so you can find therapists who are specific to understand our space.
Talk a little bit about why that is important.
Well, you said it at the beginning, we're all different. And it's like getting in with a therapist is like getting married. And you know, if it's not the right one, you need to get out. So, and so, you know, people disengage, people try to engage with themselves over their mind. They sometimes are pushed into a direction where they want to engage with a therapist. And that first experience with a therapist is god awful. It's like the octopus that Talinda got served tonight. It's just awful, right? And do you stop eating because it was bad? No. Push it aside, order something else. So the same is true with therapy, right? If you've got to find one that works for you and that speaks into your way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a big misconception. I mean, I was the first of my group of friends to go to therapy, and I was like the mother hen of my group of friends. And so when I started going, they were like, "Wait, but I thought you had it together. Like, what does that mean for me?" And I'm like, "No, all I do is listen to you. I need somebody to talk to." But you know, I got lucky. I matched with the first person who I matched with, and all my issues were with men, and he was a man, and I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But he was trained in the right things that I needed help with. So, you know, that worked. But some of my friends, I mean, they went through 4 or 5 before they found them, and they were shocked. And I was like, but again, as you guys all said, everybody is different. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all type. There's so many different types of therapy out there, and there are social workers and psychologists and psychiatrists, and they're all different. And so, you know, I've had so many friends that went once, and they were like, therapy's not for me. Yeah. Or, no, that therapist wasn't for you. Or, I'm bad at therapy. No, that was a bad connection.
Or, I'm just not ready yet.
Yeah.
Or in my case, every time I talk to one, I'm crying the entire time. I'm like, and it's not, and I'm not crying because I've got so much pain inside. I'm crying because I'm engaged with someone who's just there and who's, share it with me. And that question that idea, share it with me, moves me, and then it's all over.
Right. So many times I'm in sessions and someone cries and they say, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I was like, no, today didn't go well unless someone cried at one of my sessions. Yeah. I'm like, no, this is fine. Everybody has cried. It's part of the work. Yeah.
And I think for BTS, the Entertainment Therapist Finder, it's nuanced. You know, there are therapists who know the industry or have some experience, or they have a partner or a spouse. So they know that Wednesday at 5 o'clock might not work. That's the other part. Yeah. Because they're on tour. Mm-hmm. So, or they might know, hey, one therapist might say to you, get your 9 hours of sleep. Well, I'm on tour. There's no friggin' way I can get my 9 hours of sleep. So somebody has to know those nuances. And the Entertainment Therapist Finder, it's just like if you have bipolar, you're going to check bipolar. This, you can check entertainment, music, live theater. And that therapist will be somewhat familiar with your world.
Well, and one of the things that came out of the launch conversation with these young startup bands was, well, I can't afford to have therapy on the road, or I can't afford to do this. How do I look after my team? Yeah. Well, it starts with you being compassionate. It starts with, are you okay? Can I do anything for you?
I'm fine.
And then, well, no, really.
No, but
no. But really, how are you? Are you okay? All right, let's just sit then. We'll sit together.
We did that a lot.
And listen.
Yeah.
And like you take that moment to listen.
I find when I'm in it's not happening recently, but when I was in a moment of high contention on tour, and I had a crew member who was at a meltdown point, and it may have been targeted at me, it may have been something else, I would get up out of they bring it to the office, get up out of the office, let's go take a walk. And I would walk slow, and they'd be full of anger, and they'd be walking fast, but I'd still be walking slow. And when they slowed down to catch up, to let me catch up to them, I knew that I was at a point where we could ask the question, what's going on? But until they could walk off that energy, that fast pace, it wasn't time to ask. So just taking a walk, or just sitting in the room and I'm here. That you don't need a therapist for that stuff. You can do that yourselves.
Yeah, yeah. So let's go back to you, and as the artist, how does mental health affect or impact your songwriting? How does it impact your kind of how you present yourself? And I'm curious, you come from a different culture, right? How is mental health spoken about in your culture? And how does that play out in terms of what we're saying to normalize it?
Well, I feel like mental health is not really talked about in like my dad's side of the family, my mom's side of the family. There's a lot going on, but no one really talks about it, and really kind of no one understands how to be there for someone. Like the immediate reaction is like, I need to fix this. I need to fix like what's happening. Or like, oh my God, something's wrong with them. Like, how do I fix them, basically? And it's like a weird thing, because a lot of times people just want you to listen. Like they just want to feel like they're heard. And a lot of times just saying it out loud makes them realize like, oh, you know what? Things maybe are not as terrible as I think they are. Like it was just overwhelming my thoughts. And now that I said it out loud, I feel so much better. But a lot of people don't think that. They kind of think that they need to fix it. And there's like, you know, a formula or something that they're like, I have to figure this out, you know? And I feel like that causes a lot of kind of shame a little bit, but also like the person is just like, I don't want to talk about this because I don't want to feel overwhelmed by someone being like, well, what's wrong with you? Why do you feel like this? What's happening? I don't understand. Didn't I give you a good life? Didn't this happen to, you know what I mean? And like I'm lucky to have parents that understood that in their cultures that's the way it is. So they kind of took a different approach with me and my sister, but it definitely is not a thing that's real in a sense. It's kind of just like, oh, well, you know, you have a roof over your head and you're fine. And it's definitely hard to like maintain like a positive mindset in situations like that. And I feel like it's also kind of a thing where people just need to be okay with being vulnerable. Like it does not mean that you're weak. Honestly, it means that you're strong if you can be vulnerable. Like saying like, I'm a strong person, I'm gonna hold it in, doesn't do anything except hurt you, and eventually you're not gonna understand what's going on with you. You're just like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm not supposed to be here, or I don't know how to deal with myself, and I don't want anyone else having to deal with me because I'm a burden, and it's just bad. Like, it's just better to just be vulnerable. And also for people to allow other people to be vulnerable. Like, we all need to be more accepting of that. I feel like we, as humans, put like an expectation of like, okay, this person smiles every day when they come into the office, so they must be happy. And then that person feels like pressured to be happy all the time. And, you know, there's that one day where they didn't smile the whole day, and everyone's like, oh my God, something's wrong. Like, what's going on with him, or what's going on with her, or what is this? And like, you know, should we be worried? And sometimes it's just, okay, they were having a rough day, and that's okay. And, you know, we're all human, so we all experience a range of emotions, and everyone kind of needs to be more sensitive to that and more understanding. I feel like as humans, we also think like, oh, it's just me. Like, I'm the one who's, you know, thinking in my head like this all the time. Nobody else has this problem. Or like, nobody else sees the world the way I do. But like, in most cases, we all are like that, and overthinking and stressing about something and all that. So I feel like it's just about understanding that you need to be vulnerable, and you need to allow other people to be vulnerable and to feel things.
So you're breaking the mold in your family.
Yeah.
And I mean, and a model then for other people who look at you and say, oh, I don't have to be on that stage trajectory that of this taboo subject.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like I talk about mental health a lot in my music. Like I have a lot of songs about, self-love, about anxiety, depression, all of that. And I feel like the more I talk about it, the more people are open to talk to me about what's going on with them. So I feel like if you're comfortable enough to share, other people will immediately be like, oh, I think I want to share now too. So I think it's also good just if you're, feeling a type of way in your family, you're like with your family or something in the living room and you're hanging out and you're feeling something, it's okay to share that with them. Because in most cases, like, even if they do that panic thing and they're like, oh my God, like, what's wrong? How do I fix them? What did I do to my child? Like, that's just like, because they care for you so much. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I don't want them to feel this way. But it's not a like, something's wrong with you, you're broken, or it's usually not that. In most cases, it's just like the first reaction because they're like, how do I help them? I'm so scared that they feel this way. And
Mental health first aid training.
And I think it's just, just being there for the person, just listen, like let people feel heard and let people feel like they can have emotions.
And I'd like to just add on to that. We talk about all these resources and crisis management and all of that stuff, and sometimes it just starts with the simplest thing is your own boundaries. One of my biggest downloaded freebies once were 7 ways to politely tell your family to STFU. It's shut the up. But I don't know anybody else here, but I'm the Chandler Bing of my family. Like nobody has any clue what I do. I've hired copywriters to help me try to explain it. I've done emojis to try to illustrate it. Like they don't get what I do. And usually when it comes to music industry, it's like this big weird fog that people don't really understand. And no matter how much behind the music they watch, like they don't get it. And so when you're at Thanksgiving dinner and somebody says, oh, you're still putting out that music? Like, how's that going? And in their head, they might just be like, how's that going? But you might hear it as, how's that going? And so it's very vulnerable to put yourself out there. And so boundaries really help who you spend your time with. I think it was Dale Carnegie said we're the average of the 5 people we hang out with the most. So sometimes you have to tell certain friends, I'm busy. Because if you're not in a headspace to hear the ones that always want to rely on you, maybe you hang out with the ones who are ready to hear what you have to say. When I was going to therapy, everybody I knew wanted, do you talk about me? Am I the reason you go? Do you bring me up a lot? And if I knew that they couldn't handle it, I'd be like, girl, no. And when my dad asked, I said, absolutely, every single week. Like, yes. But that was for me. I did it because I needed to express it. So just taking that moment to be like, what do I need? Maybe I need to say no right now. Maybe I need to ask for help. Or maybe I need to just laugh and put this on the side burner right now and not think about it. Get some sleep. How many times it's 2, 3 in the morning, we're still working or writing a song, and all these anxieties are coming out. But then at like 10 in the morning, it's not a big deal, right? Because we've slept on it a little bit. So boundaries can just be one of the biggest resources for yourself.
I think that's what COVID brought most, right? It taught us to care for ourselves because we didn't have anybody else to care for us at that point. We weren't out in this ecosystem of distractions. We were home alone with our thoughts or with our loved ones, and it feels like boundaries are stronger now, and I think that's a good thing.
Reprioritize.
Right.
Right.
Self-care.
I don't know where I heard this. I want to say I was at a recent commencement, but the speaker said, she was talking about self-care, said for every withdrawal, you have to make a deposit. So it's like financial management. Every time you get something sucked out, or you need to replenish yourself. And it's easier said than done. And I think in this industry, that needs to absolutely be a mantra.
Well, I always use smartphones and iPads as an example. How many of us freak out when we've left without the charger? Or our battery's on 5% and we're like, oh my God. But then we're yawning and can barely function and we're like, what's wrong with me? I should just pull it together. Well, no, your smartphone that you rely on so much needs a charger. So do you. You know, I think we take better care of these devices than we do of ourselves.
So I'm not sure how much time we have. If anybody wants to tell me. Okay, so we're gonna end, but I have one question. One question before the performance. We want to be May is Mental Health Awareness Month. All 12 months are May are Mental Health Awareness Month. For musicians, 365 days, all Mental Health Awareness Months. What's a takeaway from each of you that we can all either use for ourselves, pass on to a loved one, tell a music person that we just want them to think about? Give us one takeaway.
Okay, I'll do the time management productivity angle. You have time, so slow down, hit pause, put yourself first. There's time for all the things on your to-do list that matter. It's a great way to find out what doesn't matter. So put yourself first, and there's time for the rest.
I would say you're not alone. Like, you're not alone in any of the stuff you're feeling. Everyone is feeling pretty much the same way all the time. It just depends on who shows it the most. So just remember that people will be there for you. Like, people are, for the most part, good. You know, like, I think a lot of us are like, oh, people suck. But, like, you know, most people are good. Like, also think of your day. Most things that happen in your day are positive things. And you look at the things that are negative, even if it's silly stuff, like you'll drop your keys and you're like, oh my God, this is the worst day ever. What is happening? Everything's wrong. I'm so like off balance. But like, there were a million other things that happened that were so special and important, and you look over them because they're positive. It's like, we're like made to look at the negative more than the positive. So just try to focus on like the good things and all the like good people around you, and you've got this.
For me, it's okay to not be okay, right? And that's, you know, nobody else's dance is yours. This is my dance. I choose to think that I'm in a room with people who are great and spirited and compassionate. I choose to view this room that way. Even if somebody yells from the back of the room, hey, go F yourself, I still choose to believe that we're in this room for a reason and it's going to be okay. And the other thing I've embraced lately is the mantra, the space between. The space between stimulus and response. What's the trigger? How will I respond? The only thing I'm in control of in my life is how I respond. I'm not in control of you, or any of you. It's my choice to decide whether this is awful or this is great. So think about the space between and own that space. Practice that mantra. Don't react the second it hits you. Give it a minute. Own it. Smile at it. Whatever. Move on.
And when everybody's at their next festival, concert, live performance, theater, what have you, think about this ecosystem and advocate for them. Advocate for what is needed and change that's needed and how these conversations need to continue. So thank you, everybody.
Super cool.
Thank you.
Always ready. I'll move that
this working? Oh, yeah. How you guys doing? Good? Yeah? That was fun. That was my first time doing that. You guys could probably all tell, too. Thank you. It was a lot of fun sharing the stage with them. They're awesome, awesome people. Are we good to go? Oh, awesome. Okay. You could do a little intro if you want. This is Andrew on guitar, by the way. I laid out my secrets. You made me feel hurt. Then played out a story that ended in hurt. Defeated my weakness, I gave you what's hurt. Then you in your glory watched as I burned. I don't wanna hear about how I feel. Nothing will change what I see. You turned around and let me down after every promise you pinky. I won't waste another second explaining how things could be. For the sake of my time, I learned to love me. So I know all your tricks now. I've been here before. Our love was for kids, that's why it's so immature. And okay, it's not always love at first sight, but our eyes introduced us. Thought we most saw something we liked. I don't wanna hear about how we feel. Nothing will change what I've seen. You turned around and let me down after every promise you pinky. I won't waste another second explaining how things could be. For the sake of time, I learned to love me. Oh, when you love to doubt me, oh, that's why you never found me. I'm gonna love me without you. No, I don't really care about how you feel. Nothing will change what I've seen. You turned around and let me down after every promise you pinky. I won't waste another second explaining how things could be. Oh, for the sake of my time, I learned to love me. Thank you. So that one was called Learn to Love. Basically, learning to love yourself. Also, dissing the person you're with that didn't make you feel loved, but, the important part, loving yourself. This next one is called, and my hair is attached to my finger. This next one is called You Are Beautiful. And I kind of want to ask you guys to do something fun with me, if you want. Yeah? I can't really see you guys, so I need Yeah. Awesome. Okay. I'm gonna let Andrew start it. So I want you guys to clap along with me. Can you do that? Don't you dare shower. You got a light in you. I'll find you. Shake out your curls and show them your attitude. 'Cause you matter too. You're already beautiful. Always been beautiful. More than just beautiful. You are so beautiful. When we feel love, well, it brings down our self-esteem. You know what I mean? But you ought to know by now that you're already beautiful. Always been beautiful. More than just beautiful. You are so beautiful. And don't you dare, I'm a pretty little hair on that head of yours, on that head of yours. And don't you dare let anyone tear your confidence away. Self-love is here to stay. Oh, you're already beautiful. Always been beautiful. More than just beautiful. You are so beautiful. Yeah, 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 yeah. You're beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You're beautiful, powerful, wonderful. You're beauty from head to toe. And you've always been beautiful. You are so beautiful. You are so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Zaina, and I really hope you enjoyed tonight because I did. This is a lot of fun, so thank you for having me.
Let's hear it one more time for Zaina. Thanks again to Els, to Rabel, to all of our panelists. Thank you all for being here. Such an amazing, beautiful night. So just thank you for joining us. And if you're free on Saturday, come out to Central Park for the main event. And hope you all get home safely and keep supporting mental health within yourself and in your community. So thanks again. Take care.